waiting for a tip or a management review or, other things to happen. And the losses are just dramatically reduced, durations reduced. But, one of the biggest assets that we're not looking at, data assets, is text data right now. So we got to think about that, and that's what I wanted to talk about. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide. It's a great link, and you can watch a video to this YouTube video. And I found it really funny that it was almost perfect, how this system actually predicts where police should go on a given day, time, and what should be occurring there. And this fellow, burglary in this section, a 500 by 500 yard kind of block, go there at this time. And sure enough, he goes there, and there's a car with a door open, and the house, as you can see here, the door's open, and the police officer goes in. And it's just really interesting how they predict, using this technology, and we can start doing this too. But it doesn't replace us, as that quote notes. It really just makes us better. It improves us. So I also found it funny. A person I just got off the phone with about 10:30 my time at one of the firms said to me, everybody's talking about big data, but no one really even has a lot of great examples yet of what they're doing. It's still kind of in the nascent phase. And you can see that with even though this is 2 years ago, it's like very few respondents are using a lot of big data, even in the forensic kind of space where normally they do a lot, So I know it's happening, and I know some companies are doing a lot, like they're doing reputational risk analysis and things like that. But there are a lot of others that are not. So the reason for that, why is that? Why are we not looking at all of the text right now? The population of data that we've been looking at is accounting records, because I would assume that not everyone, but almost everyone in the room was trained to follow the money and follow the numbers. So it's all about the numbers. It's all about dates and numbers and account numbers and code numbers, and but never, we never really spent a whole lot of time looking at text notes to the purchase order or an actual customer complaint, or maybe just a CEO's email. Could be something. So that's as you get into the unstructured data over on the middle, and then possibly even external data and bringing that in. But a lot of that is text too. It's like OFAC lists and things like that you need to match up. So it's a lot of text. So 90% of our data is text-based. But when did we last audit text? And some companies are. A lot of companies are doing keyword analysis. So that is the go-to test right now. And I think almost, a lot. I did a survey of the crowd of 170 people at this event, at the conferences, and at ACL, about 60 to 70% of people said they were doing some keyword analytics in journal entries or a payroll or somewhere, and so 5 years ago, I'm not sure that's true at all, and here we are 5 years later, it's good. I'm going to talk more, though, about this letter analytic technique, which really changes the words and turns them into more of a Benford law that we can look at. And I was going to send a survey out, but I have a question, actually, is for the group. And, how many people have not heard of Benford's law?
Who in the group has not heard of Benford's law? You want to raise your hands? Looks like no hands have been raised. Or they're very shy.
Yeah, no, I've asked this question in a group of accounts payable, shared service, CFO people at a BASWR conference, and then also recently at an accounting conference. And it was interesting to see that in one conference, no hand went up, literally, but it was the other way around. They didn't ever hear of it before. And then the other one, about 10% went up. So somebody had heard of it, but it was very few. So outside of audit, you don't really hear of Benford's law. And that's why it's kind of cool that it's coming out of there, because it's something where I knew Mark Negrini, and I'm sure Mark lived in Dallas many years. I got to believe many of you probably worked with him or talked to him while he was there. But I was good friends with him, really learned a lot about Benford's law from him. And just one day I said, But what if we use that Benford Law approach to look at all the data, the text? And that's how we got here. But let me start out with the red flag word phrases, and it's something where this is what a lot of people do, but for those that don't, what you can do is build a database of suspicious words, search the entire data file for those words, kind of looping back, to the table, getting the next word like fraud and then plug and facilitation payment. It could be a phrase. It doesn't have to be a word, but you get the point. And then you summarize that by person, by department, by country, and you start to get an idea. If facilitation payment is on average being used more in a given country than another, maybe we go there. So the WorldCom case was really interesting to me, and in that, and I should also ask just another question. The slides are kind of moving for you too. I see the video, but it's sort of like it's totally fine. It's just a little whited out, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm up to the right page, but it looks like I'm up to lessons for WorldCom on the screen. I just wanted to check.
Yes.
Thanks.
I don't know if you can see us.
So sorry. Thank you. So the WorldCom fraud was primarily identified through journal entry testing by Gene Morse, you could see in there, and Cynthia Cooper was his boss. And they were looking more for just journal entries that were repeating and account numbers that were repeating. But I bet if they looked for line costs, they may have seen that it was spread across lots of accounts. It was sort of hard to see. And that may have been a better, bellwether, like if line costs jumped up or corporate unallocated revenue accounts. But what's the problem with this, right? Like, so going back to our little keyword idea, what if the keywords aren't keywords? What if they're just words like line costs that you would never expect? Many frauds are called pineapple, pepperoni, pizza, just kind of odd words that people would use, but yet are ones that are kind of could be used as code words for that given fraud. So it doesn't have to be as direct as line costs like they did. They actually put it in the journal entry over and over and over again. So much so that the SEC, letter to NCI actually had line costs in the first sentence of the, or maybe the first paragraph, but I believe it was even like the first sentence of the letter to them. So it was clearly a big issue once they found that out. So what AuditNet and I had done, because we had asked everybody for their keywords, and everybody being the FBI, certified fraud examiners, etc., we went and built our own, and we did a survey of 500 people, and we sent out the data files to the people that responded to the survey. But now we sell it. I'm sorry to plug that, but it was just more. It's 2,000 words, and it's pretty cheap. But I did want to note that AuditNet sells that, so it's something where it was their survey and they kind of sell it. But it's 2,200 words, unique. That have been summarized. We can even look at the file if you want. Happy to do it. But overall, some of the words are you probably would delete because they're not really that good. But some of them you probably wouldn't have thought of and like. So what I found really interesting about that survey, and it was really nice to see everybody kind of come together on it. From a summary result point of view, the top words are shown here. So this gives you an idea. Like gift or gifts was 52 times, and then in the moving forward though, and you can definitely use those words. I just don't want to spend time on it. There's pressure, opportunity, and rationalization of fraud. And why not, look at emails, let's say, to identify this. But one of the CPA firms I'm talking to were kind of considering asking the CFO, controller, and CEO for their emails, but under, we can talk about it as we get into the letter analytics, but because we really feel like they're sort of the most at risk of setting up a fraud. If you look at the fraud case studies on financial statement fraud, 80% of them, like 80%, are between either the CEO, CFO, and I would assume controller, but it is the top ranking group. But we could look at their words, not so much to read emails, but in a letter way, and that would be more of like a sanitized way of looking at things. So we're kind of researching that, but again, a piece of evidence, emails that you would normally never expect to get from a client, but maybe you could kind of put it in a way that you could, and it would be like a sanitized kind of way. So we're sort of talking about that. But these are the types of words you would look for, especially from a financial statement fraud point of view, and that's what we're trying to show here. But also from just emailing one another about frauds that they want to rationalize and say, we basically, I want my piece of the action, or they'll be sorry, or what have you. These are things you could be pulling out at some point, maybe from emails, but that's where you start getting into privacy concerns of looking at emails at that level. At the letter level, which we'll explain, it's more sanitized, and you don't really have a lot of those issues from a privacy point of view. So we updated the words, but big deal. I just wanted to note that. So the moving beyond bad words, though, I mean, these keyword lists, because line costs and unallocated revenue accounts, they really weren't bad words at all. It was just sort of something you would normally see in a general ledger. The corpus of contemporary American English, feel free to go get it. It's $795. I believe it's a commercial license, so you could use it. It boils down to about 2 million unique words. I can't give them to you. You have to buy it from, Mark Davies, who maintains this. It's not that expensive, but it's very useful to use this to kind of identify, what words are we using that doesn't match up to the baseline. It really gets to like a Benford law of words, but not letters, which I'm going to get to. But it's like a Benford law of words, where you're actually taking the words that occur and matching it to the words that you're using and seeing which ones jump out. The problem with that word analysis, in my opinion, is you get a lot of deviations that you have to then sift through. It can get quite difficult, and that's as we'll show. This tells you, this actually is kind of interesting. 5,000 words of the 2 million unique words, 5,000 make up 73% of the used English that we have. So, if you learn 5,000 words, you can actually, get around pretty well in a country or so. So I'm going to attempt trying to do this. 2, 3. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous kind of percentage, I guess, when you look at 5,000 on 2 million, but yet it's 73% of the words. But we see that a lot in stratifications. You can download that file from that link. It's the top 5,000 at least. That's kind of interesting. The word analysis, you can also kind of pop your data into here. It's just you're putting it on the web. I mean, I don't think people are going to do that, but I'm just showing it to you. There are products like Luke out there that will do sentiment analysis. It isn't really what we're talking about today, but I wanted to note it to you because you could do kind of a word analysis to a sentiment dictionary of are they anxious? Are they happy? Are they sad? All of that could be sentiment analysis that you're doing on emails or social media. I'm working with a bank in that they're looking at customer complaints and trying to, see trends and what's ramping up and down. And it's just using data. You don't have to respond to the data, but at least, you know the one thing that's jumping up is, I don't know, the doors aren't closing on the car properly or something like that. Like that's the number one complaint. Maybe we should focus on that, because that's what everyone's talking about. Anyway, getting back to the different types of sentiment analysis that you could do. These are some examples. I really didn't want to put too much up here about their product, but just to give you an idea of sort of positive emotion and negative emotion. There are some free ones out there. I haven't really put it together yet, but there are some ones. Princeton University, which is New Jersey, where I'm at, they I believe have one, and it's open source and it's out. So if you put like Princeton and sentiment analysis, I think you'll find it. Twitter analysis as well, kind of interesting. This is if you want to put your or sort of focus on this. All you have to do is put a Twitter handle in. Let's give this a try. I mean, I just want to show you sentiment analysis, and just give me 1 second here. So I think it was called analyzewords.com. Maybe. Yep. So I really don't have much on a Twitter handle myself. I'll I'm trying to think. Does anyone know a good Twitter handle that we could throw in here?
Does anybody know a good Twitter handle?
I'm like never on Twitter. I'm terrible. I have a Twitter account and I don't.
Do you have a good Twitter handle?
No, I was thinking about Trump or Hillary.
All right.
This is
Hillary? Is it just Hillary?
Oh, Trump or Hillary?
Trump or Hillary.
And you just literally put Trump, right? All right. Okay, so it's taking 999 most recent words, etc. Upbeat, worried. He's not worried. He's sort of average angry, and he's not really depressed. Seems to be personable. Well, I think he's low on personable. He's average on arrogant, which is kind of what have you. But he's high in spacey Valley Girl, which is kind of interesting that's throwing a high mark. And then a few others. I'm not sure if this matches them or not. I don't really track him that much right now. It's hard not to, but I mean, I'm really not tracking at this level. Let me give a whirl here. I don't have a whole lot on mine. Yeah, and
you don't want to try Hillary?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Hillary. Yeah. That's fine. You'll get the comparison now. Perfect. Beautiful. Upbeat. Whoa, she's way more upbeat than him. Very high. I don't think we saw a very high for him in anything. Worried average, angry average, worried. So I think she was a little bit more worried. Depressed is low, which is good. Personable is high. I don't think he had that at all. But she's also Spacey Valley Girl, which is kind of interesting. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but there's an index out there of what grade level that you're writing at. Depending on the date, the text that you're using, and I forget the index, but there is something out there you could look up to do that. Anyway, so just didn't want to spend too much time on that, but wanted to get you back to the presentation. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, so cool, fun tricks, and now we'll get into word summarization. So Are there any questions so far? I've talked about like sentiment analysis. I keep touching on the letter analytics as more of a faster way, but any thoughts?
Any clarifying questions or any? Is everyone getting the concept of where we're going with words and letters, and any questions? Is anybody doing any kind of Benford analysis currently of their program? Not with words, but you're doing with letters? Numbers. Or what? Okay. And, okay. So, Rich, can you hear everything we're saying?
Yeah, you can hear me okay. Great. Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. So, the first thing I started to do when I got into word, text analytics was just summarize words. Split up a column like a journal entry, like we're looking at here, and literally just start looking at things. We did our keyword analytic, right, of those words. Of course, once you summarize it, right, you sort of do a keyword analytic. And I also wanted to look at the trending. I found it so interesting. In one case, we had adjustment 328 times twice, like in year 1 and year 2, exactly the same. What is the chance of that? Yet, I don't think there's fraud, but, boy, oh boy, it looks sort of very odd. Gift card as well, a couple of times. But you could see what's trending upwards, and maybe correction. They're doing more corrections, not less. They're doing more reclasses, not less. I'm not saying that any of these things are perfect science, but it gives you a trend. It gives you an idea of why are you increasing? So what do you do here? You take a table. You could use text to columns in Excel. You could use the split function like I'm doing here in ACL, and you could split a column into 10 columns, let's say 10 words. You could count how many words are in the column and actually split it that exact many times. I mean, there's a whole slew of things you could do, but the goal is to kind of summarize all those words ultimately, like extract them and summarize them. And what I like to do is summarize by month and year as well. In this case, I did it by year in this example. I'm sorry, it's really small. Hopefully you can see it. But it gives you this idea of looking at not so much Benford law, which I know everyone knows what it is, Benford law, but my law. What is my benchmark? Forget Benford law. I mean, Benford law is very interesting for numbers to kind of see how am I different? But I heard JCPenney, as an example. I hear GameStop. I'm sure a lot of the prices are $49.99, $59.99, $19.99. It would sort of throw the curve, especially the last two digits. 99. My gosh, it would be all over the place. 49 probably be another one. But from a word point of view, it's almost better to look at what was last year in relation to this year. What's going up? Is it more 1999s? Is it, whatever? And that, what's kind of cool about some of that analysis when we're doing it on Benford's Law is that you're, getting a little bit more strategic, even like looking at sort of trending and pricing of product and such. But back to the words. You can create Wordles online like this. I'm showing it to you, but I'm kind of saying you're putting your words online, so it might be concerning. I do this advanced one where I just put the word and the count, so I don't put the data up there. I just literally put like fruit bats, 133, and a lot of times too, I'll even filter out a lot of things that look private, if you will. But for the Wordles, you can use Tableau. Personally, I don't use Wordles. So Wordles to me only can handle about 250 words, and like you see here. But this list that I wordled, right? This is the 2,153 unique items. You're only looking at the top 250, which is fine. I mean, that's good, but it's not looking at the whole population. If you try to take a Wordle and relate it to one another, like year on year, you can't do it. I mean, it's pretty, but it doesn't really work from an analytic perspective. So that's kind of where I came in with this. And it's sort of, I was doing my word summaries and I'm like, this isn't working. The Wordle isn't working. And I wrote an article on it. You can, just take a look probably for like Wordle and Lanza, and it'll come up. I wrote it for Predictive Analytic Times, and a fellow by the name of Eric Siegel, who wrote a book called Predictive Analytics. It's, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best books out there on that topic for people that are just getting started like me. And I've read a few, but some get really technical, and that one is not. But it has a lot of case studies and is quite fun. But anyway, in getting to those word deviations, Eric Siegel, who saw the kind of the benefit of going from a Wordle to summarizing it the way I was talking. So I'm more about kind of finding those deviations, and not so much kind of so really like volatility deviations versus trying to do the sentiment analysis and all that for what we're going to be talking about. So what are we talking about? It's analyzing letters versus words. What does that mean? Do we look at all the letters and put them all together? Do we look at the middle ones? Do we look at, we're looking at a Benford Law of it, so we're looking at more or less the first two characters and the last two characters. So just to show an example, how many people can read this sentence? I'll give you a few seconds there.
Can everybody read the?
It doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. So what I've learned is that, and I have another article on that for Wheel of Fortune, which I think I have another slide on in a little bit, but I kind of started trying to figure out how I can beat Wheel of Fortune utilizing this technique of letter analytics, and I think it kind of works pretty well, actually. So, that's something I've been working on as well. Okay, so back to what are we doing here? We all know what Benford's Law is. It's law of such. What I did was I took that COCA, the 450 million words. It's a lot of fun putting together, let me tell you. I mean, it's huge data. It's almost a terabyte. But the COCA ranking, it looked at the first letter. So I looked at 1990 to 2011, and how did it change over that time frame. And as you can see here, the letter X, the letter Z, letter T, letter A never change, right? I mean, 20-something year trend, we're good. We're always in the bottom we're always 24, But then there are some changes, but it's very minor in my opinion. It's almost like a one up, one down scenario. You can almost average the ranking, in a way. But with that said, you can kind of see that there is a little bit of a Benford law. Now, I don't think it is a natural law. Like Benford's law is a law of numbers, and I just feel like numbers and mathematics is more of a natural law of nature. But here we're talking about what we're speaking with and our spoken tongue, and it's English. In this case, if you translated this to another language, it would be totally different letters or characters. It wouldn't even be letters. So this kind of has a lot of different permutations that you have to do. But this one covers a lot. Yeah, I mean, this one is basically what we expect spoken English to be, and then relating it to data. So let me kind of show you a different approach here. I've written a fair number of books, and one of them that I wrote, which I talked about at the ACL User Conference, was 101 ACL applications, which I literally wrote 20 years ago. July 1996 is when I started writing. It was published at the end of 96, like early 97. But we had everything rolling for that. And the 101 apps, I took the PDF of that and summarized it and created this. And then I kind of lined it up to the COCA, which we were sort of just talking about. That COCA is, again, what is the number of occurrences of the letter T and the letter A? And you can see here some of the words that are sort of coming up. The word "the" is the number one, etc. But batch, right? You would not expect batch to show up in the English language as ranking number 6 or 6 in this case. But because in ACL we used to call them batches, of course it's going to be. Actually the word batches should be in here somewhere. Lanza, Richard, of course, showing up heavily in here. But let's kind of break. This word thing gets annoying, in my opinion. It gets very difficult. It's n-grams and vectors, and it's sort of not fun, in my opinion. So if I pivot table on that first letter and do a relationship of the percentage, it doesn't, not the full count of words, but the percentage of A and B and C and such, I can get to that 100% kind of, relationship for my 101 apps and the 450 million COCA. So 101 apps, just to give you a count, right, had a lot of words in it, right? It had 4 million. No, that can't be right. Give me 1 second. And if it is right, I'd be really, it isn't right because I have the COCA in there. So give me 1 sec. Hold on. I knew that wasn't right. Okay. So the ACL application book had 65,000, give or take, words, word occurrences. The actual number of words was 3,023 that were unique. Like I said, 2 million words in the entire dictionary of the COCA, 3,000 in mine. It's not that uncommon. I mean, to have that. 64,000 words, mind you, is a decent number of words when you sort of add them up. The 101 apps COCA, we have the percentage. What I wanted to do is just chart that for you. So how far off is that? I mean, this is just random stuff. I just so we all are clear, I literally woke up the morning of the speech and came with this idea. It was sort of like the shower idea, but I woke out of bed saying, I can take 101 apps and make a PDF of it because I'm giving it to everybody at the show, which I'm happy to, if I haven't given it out already to this group, I'm more than happy to give you that book as well if you use ACL. So this is the COCA, which is in orange, and 101 apps, which is in blue. So this is interesting, right? A for ACL, the book, the company name, right, is showing up heavier than the COCA. Makes sense. There's another one, I think R. Yep, R shows up a little bit more because of rich, probably, but also the word review, as you'll see in a second. So let's kind of break it down a little bit further. So let me get rid of P. Whoops. Sorry, hold on 1 sec. Mouse giving trouble. There we go. So we'll go to the chart of that, and I just want to kind of show you here. Right now we have A through Z, but the R's in here, I broke out by 2 digits. So RE is big and RI is big, like we expected, because I use the word review a lot. It's just sort of, you should review review this, you should review that. It's something that auditors say a lot. So if I double click on this RE, which is the breakdown, the first two digits of R, characters, sorry, and I sort on the count, don't worry about that COCA. Let's get rid of that because it's confusing. And what I have here is reserved, actually is number one. It's kind of interesting. I guess we were talking about reserves, and review was number two. And probably down below there, we might even have reviewed, reviews, receivable. I mean, we're a heavy RE, accountants are, and auditors are in what we're doing. There's something in C as well, but you get the picture, and I just wanted to kind of show you this to give you one example, at that level. So back to the Benford Law of Words slide deck. What I ended up doing is, notice how before I kind of broke up that R, and that would be kind of like that R down here, if you can see my mouse sort of in the middle of the screen. There's that R in the middle there. That would be that breakout where that graph there that you're seeing has a breakout. And on this page, I have a dashboard of every letter. So instead of, having to break each one out and look at it in that other chart, I put them all here. And I'm like an airline pilot looking at this going, okay, what's the stuff that really is, out of whack? Now, the real way I got to this, like the first example ever, was I took a general ledger fingerprint. And the general ledger fingerprint allowed me to take a general ledger, journal entry description fields. And like we were sort of showing before with the Wordle, I then went to a much better analysis by getting to this here. So let me just, I'm trying to, bear with me 1 minute. Did I open that up or not? Okay. So in Excel, take a look at this. So what I have here is about 11 million word occurrences, sorry. It's like 40,000 unique words, and it's all the journal entries from about, I think it was only like 2 million line items in the journal entries. But because you have like 8 words on a line item, it grows really quickly. So it was a lot of words, looked at them all. And this, and that one statement there, we looked at them all. What was really interesting about Benford's Law, just kind of heading back to that for a second here, is that the one thing that, sorry, just give me 1 minute here. I can't get this to open up. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to, there we go. So well, bear with me 1 minute here. So in the actual general ledger, what I wanted to say is that with Benford's Law, you're following a law, but in this type of analysis of the journal entries themselves, and I'm just going to rotate this a little bit, you can create a fingerprint that's more of a MyLaw fingerprint versus being so kind of tied down by Benford's Law. And in our case, it's not really Benford's Law. It's like a COCA law that I'm using. But I like to kind of relate benchmark data one to another over time. So this summary here, I don't want to spend too much time on it because I want to show you other examples. But another thing we do is we summarize by the amount. So in this one here, let me just try to get to the pivot amount here. What I'm doing in this pivot table is I'm pivoting on the dollar amount of that journal entry or that transaction, so that line item in the journal entry. That transaction, I'm going to use that amount for every word in that journal entry, which, may not be the best idea, but it's all relative. Like our goal here is to make it relative. You could probably do this in percentage form, but I think the dollars works better for this graph and what people are trying to get at with the graph, which is what are those deviations in the fingerprint that, as I look at things over time that are really changing from an amount point of view. are there, are these, even just looking at a few of these really large spikes, like a couple of them, I think would point us towards more that line cost, LI, for example, kind of scenario. I mean, again, it's a little bit in theory, but I am starting to find cases where this works. You'll see there's a really, not really, but a very good tight fit. And what am I looking at here? Sorry, I'm looking at A through Z, and then I'm looking at year 1 to year 2. So it's like you're working your way backwards in the graph, year 1 to year 2, for the first word in the journal entry, the second word, the third, the fourth, and so on and so forth. So you're kind of like breaking up the journal entry by words, but you're keeping the word order intact so that you can relate it year on year. And that's, again, my law with letters. And I'm just doing the first one. You can look at this other ways. Like I'm just giving you ideas of pivot tables. This was like another another prettier version of it, but you get the idea. Where I think sometimes the 3D versions and some of the newer graph techniques with Excel are quite good. If I can get this to work, yes. I mean, you can get a pretty good visual of where things are really out of whack, and like this one red one up here that P, and it looked like it's the second word. It's really jumping up in relation to other time frames. Okay, enough of that. I don't know if I'm going too fast or if I'm over, doing some points at times, but I find that sometimes this is very new to people.
So I guess I have a question I'll add. So when you see that analysis, kind of walk me through, you see where a spike has happened over time. And so what is your thought process? Is it kind of you sample from that area, or you just dive down data?
Let me show you some other examples. Yeah, that was a kind of a real client, so I don't want to dive into their data too heavy, but I'll show you some other public ones. But let's do that too in a second here, and I'm going to get to that in a sec, so you'll see. We just wanted to make the point that if you look at the first and last letter of the COCA, you're looking at 50% of all words. And that's why, this is sort of working from a relationship point of view. But it's also why this sentence idea works in the first place, too. If you get the first and last letter, you have half the word. That's pretty good when words could be 8, characters long. All you need is 2 in order to figure it out. So I just wanted to note that. And then the dashboard, as we're going to dive into it, this was one, way of doing the dashboard where you actually have, kind of one bar on top of another. You might like that approach. This is where I wanted to, we're going to go into this graph, but I wanted to show that RE jumps out pretty heavily in this analysis. And what is this analysis? We were looking at all British song titles, and we looked at 1950, 60, and 70. We looked at all song titles, like the words, and we related it to the 80s and 90s. And at a high level, I know it's really hard to see, but at a high level, you don't see a whole lot of like all orange and no blue. And, it's very like consistent, 80s and 90s to 60 and 70. But RE does look a little off. The others look a little off too, like RO looks a little off, but truly like RE is more for the 80s and 90s. And that's what I was looking for. What changed in the 80s and 90s that wasn't the benchmark? And sure enough, just to give the answer, it's remix. And it's because the technology came in the 80s. So we didn't have it before. We never had the word, remix didn't exist. Now, how does that help in an audit? One thing, it may show some risks. From a perspective of customers, vendors, employees that are saying things about the company on social media, et cetera. But this is what's trending. It's trending in a word point of view. And, I was trying to say before, and I sort of went back, I wanted to finish the point on the general ledger data, is that I find, by doing some of this analysis, you're able to find all of the deviations, all of the volatility that is really big. I'm going to show you ways of cutting that a little bit better, but it's Benford's Law is because they said, these other techniques, maybe Stratify, you're kind of looking at all the data. But with Benford's Law, you're really looking at all the data, but in a way of frequency volumes of the numbers themselves, the amounts themselves, which is just a very unique and interesting way of doing it. We're doing the same thing with the letters here, and the whole goal of this, of course, is to find volatility, and with that volatility, like we find here, you can find that remix is this new word. So what I'm getting at is building a 26 first letter type of grid that is cut by a 702 letter grid. And the first two letters versus the first letter. And again, this is my little, proof there, but we'll just go past that. I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on this slide, other than, because I want to get into some examples, but other than to say that the keyword analysis that we did back in August and kind of continued in February and such, it really got me thinking about the words more and doing summary analysis and all that, which then brought out LaLa, which is this letter analytic technique. I've been doing some analysis of that Luke product with LaLa, and what we're looking at is public company documentation, which we'll try to show you. And here I am today, right? So I mean, this has not been out a long time, but I will tell you, I went to Text Analytics World in May of 2016. And this is, data scientists, there's about 80 people, all, focused on text analytics, and no one had ever heard of it, but they were intrigued. I mean, they obviously Eric Siegel was intrigued too. He put the article up, but, this is what is sort of a new thing. And it's coming out of audit because no one ever thought to look at the first few digits like Benford's Law. I'm going to leave this up here just for a second. Let's come back to it. I want to show more examples, and then we'll come back to kind of like where else can it be used and such. But let me get still back to your example or question, Shannon. Just give me 1 second here. So I realized that I needed to cut things a little bit differently in order to, more refine the analysis and do it faster. Because again, what's nice about this, what's nice about this is it's an analytic. It's not something that we're running because auditors don't have a whole lot of time, in an audit to do an entire, study of our words and spend months doing it. I mean, that's management's, job. We're kind of looking for the big stuff, right? That's the way I always looked at it. And this is a way of looking at everything, but also trying to pull out the big stuff, which I found useful. So, looking at this, though, what I wanted to tell you was this is those British song titles that we were just talking about, like Remix and all that. But there's something different about this graph. We're only looking at 20% of the data. And the reason is there isn't a whole lot of words that start with consonant, consonant, vowel, or vowel, vowel. It's something like out, O-U-T. It doesn't happen that much as you think it would from the beginning letters, because generally speaking, you're putting a consonant followed by a vowel, and vice versa. So, and I've proven in the COCA that it's 80% of the time consonant vowel, and then 20% of the time consonant, consonant, etc. And when you take out, and that's only when you take out TH for the. Okay, why am I telling you all this? What I wanted to do is put the big letter groupings to themselves in their own graph. And in this case, I'm just looking at the small letter groupings, which are the consonant, consonant, vowel, vowels. So if I scroll into this, just to kind of look at some deviations, and I'm not, I'm not expecting greatness here, but I'm looking for where orange is bigger than blue. And I will tell you, these percentage differences are not a lot. I mean, I'm not going to click into some of these because they're like, I don't know, like 1%. The DR is a little bit more, and again, this is the Britburn British song titles. I can click into DR, and then I see, well, it's only about 10% or so more. It's not a huge driver. Let me try to find something a little bit better. So just give me 1 more second. And should have gotten my example for you, but oh no, Microsoft stopped working. Isn't enough memory. I did have a lot of spreadsheets open, so I think I kind of hurt that one. Give me one more sec here.
This is a common problem with data analytics, is having this.
Yeah, in Excel especially. Like, gosh, if I put 100,000 records in the thing and sort it, it's it's not good. Or if it has to recalculate. All right. I think what it's doing is trying to recover everything. So just give me a second. Okay, these were all the words. Yeah. Okay. So I think I did click on this LP. It looked as though, I don't know how true this is, but yeah, I think when I looked at LP in the data, it did have a deviation. I'm having a little trouble finding a great one right now. Let's see if I can get at least one for you where orange is bigger. There are some Z's in here, but I'm not sure I'm really that impressed. So there is a UU, and it never happened in the 60s, 70s, and happens in the 80s and 90s. And I guess it's like, I mean, it only happened once, but no one ever thought to even use it before, So I don't know how useful that is in this particular case, but it does give you an idea of how you can drill in. I have been finding some things which we can talk about, but I just, wanted. Does this make sense, what I'm doing here, and how you can look at everything, how it allows you to visualize everything, and you can very quickly kind of dive into high deviations?
Does anybody have any questions? One for me, I guess I'm the one that doesn't pick it up as fast. The blue bar represented the application, and what is the orange? Can you kind of clarify that for me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is the Britburn. The Britburn are all song titles. I'm trying to think, Yesterday and Hey Jude and all those. And it's just adding up all the words. What we're doing here is we then summarized by the first couple of letters of the words and lined them up together. Now, what did I line up together? I lined up the 60s and 70s, like my benchmark years, against the 80s and 90s to get an idea of how things are changing over time.
Okay.
So let me show you my emails, because I know emails may be tough for a lot of people to get, but for anyone in forensic investigations, you might be able to, right? I mean, it's something where you have discovery or you have predication and you're able to go take a look. Is that a true statement? Like, how many people can get emails? This is a very useful question, actually, to ask.
Has anybody done an email audit? And you have? Who? Barry Manuel, you want to speak?
Well, the email audits, I'm not sure what your exact question was, but we're a healthcare company, and so we get a little nosy and dig through emails. We tell them we're going to do this, but we dig through the emails manually, kind of do an Outlook word search. Again, very manual. There's no ACL script yet that we've developed. We're working on it, and look for certain keywords, and then that pulls all the emails into kind of a grouping, and then we, again, manually skim through the emails and see if there's anything that is suspect and not appropriate.
I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, there are some tools out there to dive into PST files. I will show this to you. It's free. I'm trying to build my own set of products here, but this one's free and I like it. It's called Active Data Text Analytic Tools, and I'd sort of be remiss in not mentioning it to you. But what it does, it's free, as I said. It's related to Active Data, which is an Excel product. But John West made it for free because I had a webinar and he wanted to kind of have something cool, and he really made something cool, in my opinion. You can actually, for some reason, I don't have my Outlook set up for some reason on this, file, but you can normally point this, like browse and go point at an actual PST file, and it ends up doing a whole analysis of that. I'm just going to sit here and kind of do a scan of this one folder, and it scans for PDF, Word, text, documents, and you can include subfolders. It doesn't do Excel, so it's kind of just like the PDF, Word, text. But just as a note here, imagine if this were contracts. Imagine if this were your GRC documentation 1 year against another year, just all of it, right? Like just throw it in, like I threw 101 apps right now. You can then do summarize, and the summarize, I know I'll get to your keyword search, but the summarize kind of gives you all the summary in, I don't know, that was just a few seconds. Note, remember, 65,000 words. That's how I got it. It was real quick. And for word search, you can put like a bunch of words in here in the Outlook, if I could get it to work. I'm sorry. I think maybe I have it open. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I'm sorry. It's giving me a little bit of trouble there. But normally you can point it at your Outlook file, and it does the same thing in about, a minute or so. So do look at that. That's way better than your one-on-one searching, kind of thing. Okay, so any other questions? I mean, I was going to keep going with the letter analytics. Okay.
We have one question.
Oh, please.
Sorry, what does COCA stand for again? I already forgot.
Oh, COCA. It's not easy. It's in the slides, which if you don't have, we can get you, whatever. But it's the Corpus of Contemporary American English. So COCA. But the E is not there.
And to me, what I'm picking up is that to get some value out of this, you need to not just have 1 year. You need to have multiple years to really see a trend where something's changed.
Or months. I mean, a month of this type of text data could be massive. I mean, for some of you people. I mean, I know you're large companies like just all the customer feedback forms or Twitter type of text that you can download. I mean, I don't know if it's something you want to do, but you could. And it is public data right now, so it's not like it's, spooky.
So one question, what type of reviews is this type of analysis most valuable, and where have you seen it work the best? Like what type of areas?
Well, right now, I would say that the better place to go, I mean, I have this slide, and this is where can it be used. There's a lot of, I say the answer is everywhere. Almost. I mean, almost every data set that you have has a ton of text you're not looking at. The articles I wrote for the ACFE you talk about journal entries, and essentially say if you look at a journal entry file, about 70% of it, I think I calculated, was text. And that's a structured data file. Imagine an email file or a Word document. You know what I mean? It's all structured text, unstructured text, and almost all words. So that's what we're kind of missing the scope there in a way, in not looking at the words. But what can we learn from it? You can learn how the business process is trending over time if you just literally take all the GRC documentation for that business process area and look at it. If you could get to emails for these folks, you could do the same thing. You could look at sales orders and the notes in those fields and how those change, how procurement notes change. Are they using, facilitation payment or discount? Is DI going way up, in the data? If it isn't, at least like Benford, you could say not Benford, but like my law, you could say it's not volatile. I mean, we're staying the same as last year. I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just at least, there's some benchmark there that's going forward. You would want to know whether or not something, you should almost look at this analytic, like any analytic, right? Let me just get back to one of these pictures here. You kind of want to look at any analytic and have an expectation. If you bought a new company called, it starts with AL or something in it, AL should be shooting high this year, and if it's not, then, you're missing something. So on the examples, though, we do have some examples here. I wanted to also, and I will, one of the things that I found, most interesting, I guess, is emails, so I do mention it still. These are my emails, so I'm not showing anybody but me. And as you can see here at a high, let me just even scroll into it so you can see it a little bit better. Maybe that's too big. But looking at my emails, I'm looking at 6 months of emails, which is orange, versus 6 months of emails, which are blue. And the Brit burn was like 50s and 60s, 80, 90 in years. This is now my first quarter. It's like first half a year, second half a year. Look at the consistency of how I write. And I mean, this is based on, I think, like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of words. And there are some jumping up. It was Emily that I was working with. It was a journal entry project, just so you know, and various others. The one that jumped out really a lot, which just bear with me, was the word Zoom. You see in the second half of the year, it went from a 10% to a 37% of all Z. So the percentage-wise, it just ranked up. So what I can do is go take a look at the letter Z, and I drill into that. And ZO went way up, right? So I double-click on that. And if I sort this on the word occurrences, you can see how Zoom was second quarter, the biggest one, and in the first quarter, I don't even know if it came up or something. I mean, it was sort of like, let me just filter on this. Hold on. Yeah, there it is. So we went 298 to 1. You probably should look at that. And what's really interesting to me is that 298 to 1, which, just from like a relative perspective, we'll look at all of the data here, and I'm not analyzing this properly. Hold on. So that 298 related to the entire data set, which I need to take out COCA. Just give me one more sec. Sorry about this. Nope, it actually has it all in there. So all of the words I was looking at was 4.5 million words in the data set. And of the 4.5 million words, I'm actually able to see a deviation of ZO, based on about 298. So, 298 divided by 4.5 million is like 0.00006. But yet I can see it in a graph. And I can also tell management with some hand on heart that I looked at everything. Which is sort of the, one of the benefits of it. What we're trying to get to, and what I'm doing right now, is a lot of Python work, in that I'm downloading a lot of the SEC data, and it's for public companies, and we're doing almost like a reputational risk analysis, but based on their public filings, and trying to understand why are they volatile and the market is not volatile. Or vice versa, why is the market really volatile in their word usage, but we're not? And I'm doing it on the letters first, and then some words, and that that's some of the analysis that we do for public data. What I like about that, I know it may not seem very audit-like, but I think it's something that gets you to have a really nice conversation with your CFO beyond. Kind of whatever, a T&E audit or what some audits get to. This is very, it's very much strategic. And I think that the CFO, let's say in that case, would be very intrigued by what you came up with. I mean, I think they would, at a minimum, even if you found nothing, would be impressed that you were able to even run the calc. But this is open for discussion. I don't want to keep going too much longer because and tell me if I'm wrong here. Do I go to? I think we're sort of starting to get to the top of the hour. But I did have more on the LALA here. I just wanted to show you one quick other thing.
Rich.
Yes, please.
We have one question for you.
Please.
Rich, sorry to interrupt. I think this might be a good point to ask this question. I see a good application of this probably for the FCPA facilitation payment type scenarios.
Right.
Just a quick clarification here. So we are basing this off COCA. That means these are all proper English words, correct? Like the scenario I'm talking about is like, let's say if you're a global company and if you're looking to detect facilitation payment in a foreign country, they want to use the same English words for bribe, right? Like the bribe would be like rishwat or shifaish, some things like that, right?
I totally agree with you. And yet, I've done this analysis for like Shakespeare, which is, again, British English, like how far off of it of American English. But at least it gives you an idea, and it really does work still. But yet you're right. If it's Australian English, right, English and American. But what's funny is there's corpuses for Australian English. You know what I mean? So you can find this stuff. But I'm sorry, keep going. please.
No, I think to your point, I think it gives us some idea of what are the new words that are coming and what are the words that are falling off. Maybe that itself is an indicator that, okay, why is this new word come that we haven't seen for 10 years? So are they making up newer words, or why some word fell off that they have been consistently using? Maybe that's place where we can go and check for it just from word analytics. But I just wanted to see if you have any insights on, how you are adapting this to something like foreign words. That's all my question was.
Yeah, I mean, and the way to do it is, it's not so much the COCA that I get that jumpy about or interested in. It's more so the benchmark over time. So if I get your data, let's say from a business process in another country like Australia, let's just say, I would relate the 1 year of Australia to the other of that division, and it should have comparability or volatility. And when it does, it's like really weird. When I relate it to the English COCA, it's going to have a lot of volatility. It's not as useful, but relating them to themselves is great. And that's what's kind of interesting about this approach, is that you have to build the customized benchmark. So you have to have some baseline data to work with. What we're trying to do, again, these are some other examples. I wanted to note that ACL and I have kind of posted 35 examples, or 31, excuse me, examples of how you could use it. I am working with a professor on plagiarism right now, so that's happening. You could also look at, we're hoping to work with a health and human services group in order to look at their type of, changes in when people go visit homes, that the notes that they're using, et cetera. But I don't want to go over on time too much here. So, but are there other questions? Because I am pretty much at the end of the presentation. I hope I've gotten the point across. I do have some useful links, which I should just quickly show you, and then keep the questions coming. But you can definitely download a lot of info from all of these articles. And but let's open it up for questions, and then I just have some final things to show you. But how are we doing on time, actually?
We're doing fine. We're still within our limit. So, and what I was going to say is that bouncing against COPA is the English, but you really don't have to have a language issue if you're just looking at the characters. And so you're just seeing a volatility of the words that you're, whatever language that's in. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And I had a guy just last night email me from, I'm not exactly sure where, but he wants to translate all those keywords I have into Russian, Czech, and he has like 5 languages he knows, and he has friends that know others, and he's willing to do this, just out of interest of taking on the entire Eastern Bloc, and to that end, even just having the keywords, like 2,000 of them in this kind of way, could be a useful volatility. If you talk about your keywords, I know everyone's doing that, or I hope a lot of people are doing that. You could actually just take the analysis of the keywords. So this is an analysis of just the keyword matches, and that, I don't know if you remembered how I did this with the A through Z and all that. I don't have keywords with a Z, so they don't even show up on the block, but it shows volatility. It shows hey, why is this guy jumping up? What is that? It's it's adjustment, right? And it's jumping up to 469 when it used to be 404. Well, it's up, but it's not killer up. We don't have a huge, I think this one's a huge spike, but anyway, I don't want to waste time on it, but I wanted to show you, you can even do a keyword volatility analysis if you do the keyword analysis and then just summarize it the way that we're talking about. So, any other questions? Happy to, or thoughts, or and feel free to debate this. I don't know if this works, right? I mean, I'm saying it more. Happy to kind of get any sort of negative feedback of I don't think this works as well, because it's still in that phase.
The thing that I was thinking about, if you're getting applications, you've got unstructured data and structured data. To me, you would focus. My thoughts is you would focus on the unstructured data. Fields in the application that are drop downs, obviously those are going to be limited and restricted. So I don't think that there'd be any value possibly to analyze those fields that are very restricted and no volatility, that you'd want to go after descriptions and
line description, yeah, like journal entry line description, PO line description. Absolutely, it's where it's a free form note. But with that said, it's a free form note that I bet if you and I worked in the department, we would have something called pricing adjustment, and we would literally use that word, those words like over and over again, right? So it would almost become like a code field versus a description, but whatever. I mean, that would come out. I mean, you would see the volatility of price, P in the first word and A in the second word. You'd be able to look at that volatility.
Anybody have any questions or wanting it to relate it to their environment?
I have a funny, and feel free to ask questions. I wanted to tell a funny idea about the emails and give you a really specific example of something we found. It's fraud, and we found it through this technique. But I want to wait for your questions first. That's more important.
I don't see any questions at this time. Go ahead.
We've used the analysis, but we haven't had time today really to look at the last two digits. But what I found is the last two digits actually has more correlation than the first two digits. And with the last two digits, what we found was that basically Z and A, Z and A, coming up on the end of words a lot for some people, and not a lot for like anyone else, but for these some people. And it was three people, and they were all talking about pizza. And I won't say exactly, the exact words they were using, but pizza came out. And if you think about it, I bet you have not typed the word pizza into an email in the last month. I mean, it's probably not kind of crossed your email stream. And sure enough, these folks were doing it a few times a month, so it stood out. And the letters Z and A don't really show much. So we were able to kind of link them together based on these words, and it became almost like a link analysis, which is a whole nother thing. But based on the letters ZA kicking out, which led to the word, which led to the linkage. I hope that makes sense. But we just did that 2 months ago.
And it led to a fraud investigation?
Yeah, it was a full-on fraud investigation. They investigated. They figured out it was a certain location they were going to do the drop-off of the bribe. And they got one person on it because he was using the word way more than anyone else. And then it turned into a few others. I've said too much.
That's the good stuff that we like to hear about. So, Rich, you had talked to me about working with this group about a survey. Is that what you've got up there?
Yeah, we may as well end on this note. I did. I'll just quickly note I have a training website, 70 hours of videos. They're all free. It's ACL, IDEA, Excel, Active Data for Excel. It's all stuff we should be using, so hopefully that helps you. But move off of that. Yeah, I came up with this idea, and, just looking here with 3 minutes left, but figuring like 1 minute. One of the things I noticed is that websites like Inspirations by ACL can be I think a pretty useful type of approach of looking at things where we're kind of listing out all these possible things. But what if a small group, 40 people, got together and did an anonymous survey that Shannon would manage? I think I don't want to put you up to it, but I think that was what you were going to do, and just anonymously survey what really worked. It could be in like the last 5 years, right? But we did these reviews and I found pizza, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't have to be about letter analytics. I mean, it could literally be about finding phony vendor accounts or, whatever, TV frauds or what have you. But the goal here is to do a survey. It would be anonymous. We would know that the 40 of us are doing it, but we wouldn't know like whose is whose. and we would summarize it in a way too that would even make it worse. Like it would sort it and summarize it. You would never even know like who's. But the goal is to try to get to a real list of reports that work. Instead of running 75 reports that might work, we kind of go to the ones that seem to work the most and maybe score those reports over time better. The other thing I'd love to do is actually to even analyze the size of the fraud, based on the type of fraud. And oh, by the way, it doesn't have to be fraud. It could be just even a really good analytic and maybe a value we got out of it. That's why I put error as well. So it could just be, I will say, I probably have said this, but I saved $100 million at a company with one report. It ended up turning into like 60 million that we recovered, but not a bad day. You know what I mean? It was a Stratify report, and I have a blog you can go read if you want to. But it's kind of funny, right? That one little report finds all that money. I would definitely put that in this list, as an example. But hopefully that makes sense. But the goal is, I'd love to do that, and then I want to kind of extrapolate that to other groups, but keep it in a pretty small groupish fashion. It's not something we're just going to put out on the web, and I don't trust that. I would rather work with like small groups. Any thoughts on that are welcome. Feel free to beat up the idea. The goal is to kind of, maybe use this and even have like the AICPA Radar project, which is a continuous monitoring project they have going on right now. That's something where I'm very tapped in with them. I'm meeting them in a month. They could even maybe help us, but again, in a small groupish way. We would sort of work with maybe a collection of 500 people from them.
So would this group be interested in that? And so from my perspective, I was just going to say that obviously we're here to see what works and share those ideas. If one corporation is being very successful in either detecting fraud or a different perspective, I know that Rich is from a more fraud perspective, and I know that plays in our world. But what is working? What is had some glitches? What has been unsuccessful? So if I get your feedback that you agree that we should kind of publish that among ourselves of what's working for what industry, it might be related to industry, what works and what doesn't work. So
Shannon, I think you came up with a great idea as well, which is what doesn't work too. I mean, we could even have that as feel free to put in a negative one too, because some people don't like Benford's Law. They say it doesn't work really at all. It doesn't really find much. But I think the my law does work, but again, this feedback would be good. Weekend journal entries, I don't think that report works, because too many people work on weekends. But maybe if it's a weekend it's at night and it's a round dollar, now it's something. But anyway, we could even make it a negative feedback one too, and get people's negative feedback to the report.
So is there an interest in doing a survey to the group and trying to collect that data and share that among ourselves? So I'll work with Rich, and that will be something very specific that we can try to put together. And obviously, if you don't apply, don't respond, you're not interested in responding. But I think that's something that we need to work together, is kind of sharing our best wins and where we've had some failures, and maybe we need some guidance in those areas as well. So, yes.
Hi, I have a question in regard to the analytic that you performed. So you showed us that you performed an analytic looking at the first two letters, and when it was successful is when you looked at the whole word. Was there any reason why you didn't try to perform an analytic using a sound-like function or something similar to that? Because that will pinpoint exactly when a specific word is being used versus kind of ballpark of first two letters.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, I'm moving away from word analysis because you get too many false positives. So even a sound X, it's good. I mean, you can put together maybe 5 words that sound the same, but when you're looking at, I'm trying to think here just an example, but my book that I had about 3,000 unique words. that isn't that many. I mean, when you start getting into journal entries, it's like 40,000 or more. I mean, it could be more, and lots of occurrences. It gets hard to kind of take the 40,000 and figure out what those keywords are without going from a summary level first. It's almost like you have to stratify the data and then drill into it versus just going right in. And most data scientists, though, go right in because they have a lot of, math skills in order to kind of pick out the deviations of words. But what I'm trying to do is a much simpler approach for the masses, something that everyone could do. And it kind of works still. It's not as good as what, I think you're right in that doing a word analysis with, n-grams and all these other math calculations I do not understand is I'm sure superior to doing a letter analytic on its own. But the letter analytic is like a pointer and it's easier and it's something you could show your CFO and they would understand because it's like one big picture that you could show them and impress the boss, if you will. And not CEO. In your case, it might be CEO or COO or something as well. Sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So I think we're kind of coming to an end. If there's anybody who has any further questions to kind of wrap it up, we want to thank Rich for his presentation, and we appreciate you coming out to GameStop today. And look forward to future workings with Rich on a survey just to kind of do some thought processes about what's working and what's not working with data analytics. So thank you so much, and I guess we'll conclude our meeting today. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
So, yeah, Rich, are you still there or is he logged off? Okay, yeah, we'll arrange to have everybody get a presentation. Definitely. And for your badges, if you want to just leave them at the desk, that'll work. And if everybody can find their... Right here, just outside. I should have done that in the beginning.